Right. Are we live? We might be live. I stupidly have put the wrong scene video. The video is connected to a window which is connected to the browser, so I can't actually tab out and check, which is what I normally do. So if we are, welcome everyone. We're live. Yeah, this is long overdue. I was going to do one last week, but as many of you know, I was at Gloryhammer, having an absolute blast. This is only the third time Boris Johnson has done a PMQs since he was chosen. And this is now the first one. I've called it a pre-election PMQ because, yeah, things are going to get quite interesting. This PMQ isn't the best, but there are a number of messages within it. I've skipped a little after an awkward introductory bit, and I think it's all quite telling and damning what happens in this PMQ. There was after it something quite serious, and some MPs did do something stupid during this PMQ. There's some awkward cringe, and you know what? I'm sure you guys like cringe. I do apologise for the printer, by the way, but in preparation for my nieces enjoying a bit of Halloween tomorrow, I'm making a cauldron, and it's 82% done, but it's now on like one of the hardest parts, so I really need to leave it as it is and not interfere. So, hello Peter Edwards, hello Fairy Kitten, hello Otaku Gamer Judas, sorry. Hello Mike Smith, Lulu Bell, and Norwegian Writer. I haven't shielded this on my server or anything because I can't be bothered. I just want to do this so I can go hang out on Discord for a few hours, hopefully a few hours, before I need to sleep at some point. Hello Shiva Bear. So, let's dive in. I've ignored the awkward bit at the start where Labour MP, normally you start by saying, question number 1, hello Winston, America First, Nika, hope you're well. Where instead of saying question number 1, they jumped into the question because they forgot the protocol. Discord is for patrons, I'm afraid, Winston. Hello Rainy Days, unless you are a patron, in which case I'll send it to you later. Hello Wondering Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Immediately after questions today, I will be opening the debate on the Grenfell Tower inquiry report,
Which was leaked accidentally a couple of days early, and one of the biggest issues I took from it was that people pounced on it as an excuse to rail the fire services. You are incorrect to do that. Of course, they could have done more, but that will always be the case if so much as one person was injured. Because many died, you're just looking for a scapegoat at this point. Might I recommend the company that intentionally chose to use the wrong cladding?
but Mr. Speaker, I know the whole...
Hang on, sound is duff? Fairy Kitten, do you mean the whirring in the background? Or do you mean my audio itself? Or the video? Because if everything's off, I do apologise. It's a consequence of having to switch between Twitch and here. I can't balance the audio without knowing what's wrong. Hello Stuart Meatball and Sean M. Boris is quiet. Right, in that case then. We'll turn him up. And we'll turn up OBS as well. My apologies.
Your house will want to join me in recording.
Is that better?
After 10 tumultuous years, this is your last Prime Minister's questions. And as befits a distinguished former Wimbledon competitor, you have sat up there in your high chair, and not just as an umpire,
okay,
ruthlessly adjudicating on the finer points of parliamentary procedure with your trademark Tony Montana scowl, Mr. Speaker. Not just as...
Just to throw a little shade. I'm sorry, this guy's a midget. He barely comes up to the net line, as in, his head is just there. Knives, jeez. Oddly, I wish I was, but it's cauldrons today.
As a commentator, offering your own opinions on the rallies you are watching, sometimes acerbic and sometimes kindly, but above all as a player in your own right, peppering every part of the chamber with your own thoughts and opinions, like some tennis ball machine, some uncontrollable tennis ball machine, Mr. Speaker, delivering a series of literally unplayable, unreturnable, formally unreturnable volleys and smashes. And although we may disagree about some of the legislative innovations that you have favoured, there is no doubt in my mind that you have been a great servant of this Parliament and of this House of Commons. You have modernised, you have widened access, you have cared for the needs of those with disabilities, and you have cared so deeply for the rights of backbenchers that you've done more than anyone since Stephen Hawking to stretch time in this particular session. And as we come to the end of what must be the longest retirement since Frank Sinatra, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole House will want to join me in thanking you and hoping that you enjoy in your retirement the soothing medicament that you have so often prescribed for the rest of us. And I know members from across the House will want to join me in wishing the England rugby team the very best for the final in the World Cup on Saturday. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in the House, and I shall have further such meetings later today.
Before we continue, Jazz, I have turned it up as loud as I can. I genuinely can't turn it up any louder than I have it. The audio of the video itself is maxed out. As you can see here, it is genuinely at the top, and OBS is maxed out too. Welcome to the stream, by the way. Hello to Morris Minor, Leslie White, Spirit Upgrades. Hope you're all well, and Reason Vision. Bollocks to Bercow, I kind of agree, but at the same time, he's on his way out. I no longer care. He's done 10 years. He came in during the economic crash. He's done well to modernise aspects of Parliament that needed modernising. But when it came to Brexit, of course, there was a bias. And it is quite interesting. And I think, can we get that measurement in American Shapiros? Probably not too far off, to be fair. As far as I'm aware with Bercow, he is retiring as an MP as well. He won't be on the backbenches of Conservatives. He will go home and he will retire. I don't think he's getting a peerage, which usually happens to speakers. They get a lifetime peerage to the House of Lords. I don't think he's getting one, because it's usually up to the then government to give it, and I don't think they will. I think I'll be honest, if they're going to be consistent, they should, but I don't think they will, which is unfortunate for him, but at the same time, he's been in Parliament for a long enough time, and as Speaker, his pension is relatively large. So I don't think he'll care too much, and he can then just go about whatever it is he wants to do, speaking engagements or championing, I don't know, something boring, no doubt.
Dr. Alan Whitehead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to fully associate myself with the comments from the Prime Minister about your outstanding service as Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and to wish you a long and successful life after your speakership has come to an end.
I just want to say, hello Russian bot, that there's something of interest. Last week, Rupa Huck, that's her name is, MP for Labour, asked the first question, and it was the single, I wished I'd done PMQs then. It was the single cringiest, awkward, most delusional question I've ever heard ever. It was about asking why he hasn't fired Dominic Cummings, but the lead up to it was horrible, because, hello Jason M, because Rupa Huck decided to introduce party politics into the incident, rather horrible incident, a truly terrifying one, where 39 people were found dead in a truck container. And she introduced party politics into that. It was... that was bad. How on earth she got first question is a mystery. How on earth she's not been deselected by now is even more of a mystery. No, he got his job in the EU. Oh, he's got a job in the EU, has he? I didn't know that. I haven't paid attention to what he intends to do in his future. If it's in the EU especially, I'm not going to know this. I don't pay attention to the EU. I pay attention to the UK. As we try to leave the EU. Air quotes around try to leave.
Labour will be producing a strong offer on the climate emergency and net zero at the forthcoming election, including a full ban on the extraction of fossil fuel by fracking.
Every time a new technique is brought forward to create energy, it doesn't matter what it is, always ends up with people wanting it to immediately be stopped, because why not just keep exhausting what we currently have, or we need to find a different way when we don't actually have another way. Now, fracking's quite interesting. Hello, Tailed Feature. Hope you're well, mate. Because there is an air of danger to it, and I do tend to agree it needs to be done in other areas. Let's go with that. But the scaremongery that has been perpetuated and thrown out there is borderline propaganda at this point. And much like when it came to the argument about nuclear power stations, hello, hazardous pleb the fifth, I do think they need to be a bit more informative on it. There is a report that is being done, and I know there have been consideration for fracking in certain areas. I do think I would argue, more densely populated areas especially, it should not be done there. It should be taken further afield. Hello, Echo. You should definitely vote for me on the ballot, everyone. You're pooping. Well, I hope this helps. I hear PMQs is a natural laxative. But yeah, there's always an air of scaremongery with any new technique, and fracking is the new one. I think it needs to be addressed properly, and people need to stop getting so overly scared. There are risks, they need to be addressed, rather than simply saying, let's just stop it. Hello, Christina. Fracking. Yes, let's do that instead, actually. I think we should just work on getting a working flux capacitor. Omegon doing ballet. Yes. I plie like a motherfucker.
What chance does the Prime Minister...
Yeah, actually, that's the point, as this pleb, when I mentioned moving it. Yeah, it shouldn't be done anywhere near Blackpool. It shouldn't be done anywhere near any town, really. It should be moved further away. Whether they can do that or not, I'm not sure. Oh, is the printer bugging you? I'll pause it. It's alright. I'll pause it. I do apologise. There you go. I have paused it. My sincerest apologies if four-sided triangle it was bugging you. I do think, and another thing to address is that the government, and any government now, wants to push in the direction of net zero. Some want to do it, which can't be done. Obviously, it cannot be done. The current government has a target of 2050. And they're not on target, but that's their target. And they're going to try and push for it. With the introduction of fracking, there was a belief that there was a potential to open up a new source of energy that could then be harnessed. But because they've not yet perfected any way to do it without causing any damage to ecology, via tremors, for example, the risk is a problem because they don't know how to go about it without those tremors happening. I honestly don't see why we haven't invested more in nuclear, but at the same time, I understand at the same time why, because people get very scared about it. I was about to ask what the whining in the background was, and I didn't mean PMQs, right. Well, I'm printing Halloween stuff for the nieces, so I'll turn that back on when we're done here. But yeah, much like any new source of energy of sorts, the technique is yet to be perfect, or perfected to such a degree where those things do not happen. Unfortunately, when it comes down to introducing them or having them, implementing them, there's always going to be risks and problems while they work out how to improve upon it. I tend to agree. I do, however, want to pick a bone at renewables. Many people go on about solar energy, and I should point out now, to anyone... oh, right, do they really? I didn't know that. Thank you for the information, Sean. With renewables, people forget. They're like, oh, solar energy is amazing. It's the best thing. We should definitely have that on every roof of every house. Okay. You do know how they're made, right? I just want to put it out there. You know how they're made, right? Okay, good. Now you know. Fantastic. Let's carry on.
The think he has of matching this offer, particularly in light of the news that the Conservative manifesto is going to be written by a lobbyist for the fracking industry.
Mr. Speaker, we will shortly be making an announcement about fracking in this country in view of the very considerable anxieties that are legitimately being raised about the earthquakes that have followed various fracking attempts in the UK, and we will certainly be following up on those findings, because they are very important. I think they will be of concern to members around the House. But I must say, this government yields to nobody in our enthusiasm for reducing CO2. We have cut carbon emissions massively in the UK, and we're the first European country to commit to net zero by 2050. And that is what we are going to do. And we can do it because we believe in a strong, dynamic, robust market economy that is delivering the solutions in clean technology that are deplored by the party opposite.
Yeah, I find that quite fascinating. Labour are somewhat inconsistent. They want to jump on the bandwagon of, for example, endorsing Extinction Rebellion and the climate emergency that we declared. I don't know. I find something a little bit interesting about this. It's that we are a teeny tiny nation, and yet we are the leaders of this in the world. I mean, we have some influence, but do you think if we've reduced our carbon emissions to net zero, that others will want to copy us? No. Because they want to grow and succeed and make money. They might not care enough. I don't know how you expect to influence them on that one, but I don't know how Labour even intend to implement half their policies, since there won't be any money for it.
Simon Hoare!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of these benches, can I first of all wish my right honourable friend the best of good fortune for the 12th of December.
Yeah.
Whilst we live in a period with some uncertainty, there are 426 people who have thalidomide, who very much rely upon the health grant to give them dignity, care and support. That grant comes to an end in a few years' time, Mr. Speaker. As chairman of the APPG for thalidomide, and on behalf of those 426 recipients, could I urge my right honourable friend to end their uncertainty as soon as possible by signalling a renewal of that grant to give them the peace of mind which I hope the whole House would agree they most certainly deserve.
I should say before we continue, and this, when I was a kid, was very funny to me. To call someone a flid was quite the ad hom, and I didn't realise until very recently that thalidomide was even a real concern. And yes, I did hear about it, Tailed Feature, because I saw the memes on Twitter. I find that to be quite funny for somebody who is also busy championing Extinction Rebellion and environmental rights. But then again, doesn't she have a huge amount of vested interest in Europe as well? That contradict a number of her policies, but also show that she's not really interested in stopping Brexit because of the people, but only because of her own interests and money. That's interesting. Also, she campaigned for Brexit in 2008, and in 2019 she's now completely against it. That's interesting.
Well, I congratulate my honourable friend on everything he does for his constituents, and indeed for the thalidomide victims, and I can reassure him that the current health grant, which is indeed, as he rightly says, subject to review in 2023, will be reviewed, and I'm getting the confirmation of that from my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, and I hope that he will pass those assurances to the thalidomide victims as fast as he can.
Before Jeremy Corbyn starts, I should point out something on Boris here. You've got the poppy, everyone has one, I have one, everyone does that every year at this time, it's fine. The heart, the green heart, I believe is in reference to Grenfell. I think in honour of this, Corbyn wears a green tie. Now he gets some flack from backbenchers about the tie, not realising he was doing it as an homage to them, which I think is a dick move on the backbenchers on the Conservative side part for being like that. I did see a few articles that Theresa May actually gave him a bollocking for it. So good on her in that context, because I kind of get it. It's very disrespectful in that regard. I'm just glad he took it on the chin, really. And it's one of the few times Corbyn took it on the chin and laughed it off. So, Mog has no poppy. Yeah, I noticed. That's strange. Normally you see every MP wearing those. Maybe he doesn't want to ruin his suit.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope you will indulge me one moment while I say a word about you. I'm sure you will. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the way that you've used your speakership in the decade-long tenure you've had. You've done so much to reform this House of Commons, and our democracy is the stronger for the way that you've done it. You have served for 10 years, you've given real power to backbenchers, vastly expanded the use of urgent questions, which has been overwhelmingly popular with all government ministers, and opened up the number of emergency debates, which is even more popular with even more government ministers. And in the traditions of the great Speaker Lensman and others, you've stood up for Parliament when it has to be stood up for, and I think we thank you for that.
Before he continues, hello White, email address Globus Hystericus and Tom of Gulf City, and Peter Edwards.
You've also carried that message internationally as well in the role of parliamentary democracy and parliaments holding governments to account. And as we hope to form a government in the future, we hope to be held to account by Parliament as well. But I also think, and I'm sure the whole House would agree with me on this, you've done excellent work in opening up Parliament to visitors, exhibitions and children, and you've reduced some of these strange customs and strange garments that people wear in this building.
I like the strange garments, I'm just saying. I see how Black Rod dresses, and the Master-at-Arms, I believe, or Sergeant-at-Arms in the chamber. They all wear these very old robes and these really high socks. Come on. I like it. I don't want to see a guy carrying a sword dressed like, well, I'm trying to see if I can see anyone in the shop with a decent suit on. Perhaps the guy next to the beardy guy on the road behind with the yellow lanyard might qualify. Yeah, it doesn't look right with a sword. And yes, there's a lot of a brown tie. Well, I'm sure if he, give it enough time, he'll have that. Although, if the speakership election, hello Muffin, Maverick Muffin, by the way, and Renovatio, hello. I think with the speakership going on, if it's a Labour person chosen, because there are two options really for them, Chris Bryant and Harriet Harman, if either one of those win, he is going to be so happy because it'll be either another woman or a gay man, and that's a big deal because people care, right? No one cares. It should, in theory, it will be a Labour MP anyway. I don't see how any Conservative MP is going to win speakership.
It's all right, it's all right. I know you're all jealous of my tie, but it's okay. And the way in which you've used your office, Mr. Speaker, to increase diversity amongst the staff in the House and make this a much more LGBT-friendly place. You've taken it away from being a gentleman's club that happens to be in a royal palace to a genuinely democratic institution. So I want you to accept our thanks and pass on our best wishes to Sally, Freddie, Oliver and Jemima, your wonderful family, for the support they've given you. And a great celebration today, and I'm sure the whole House will join us in this, is when you and I, Mr. Speaker, celebrate Arsenal beating Liverpool tonight.
It should be pointed out that while they're Arsenal fans, I haven't got authority. Corbyn supports like 4 different teams anyway. And yes, the virtue's gone on for quite a while. I do apologise. We haven't even got to the first question and we're 20 minutes in. I was hoping to be done with this within half an hour. Apparently I'm wrong.
The Labour Party loves a debate and loves a bit of banter. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's...
I should tell you now, for the sake of the spoiler, I guess, this PMQ is predominantly, as I said, pre-election related because they're now going to start. They're going to start churning out some numbers and making themselves seem like they're better than they are. It's cringe, but I thought I'd share it with you anyway.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's planned sell-out deal with Donald Trump means yet more National Health Service money being siphoned off into private profit. Channel 4 dispatches reported reported that the cost of drugs and medicines has repeatedly been discussed between US and UK trade representatives.
So I want to, before he continues this, because this is a... Hello, Christina. And Fairy Kitten. There is going to be something that crops up, and Patriarch of the Sith. Sorry, I didn't notice you earlier. There is there is a point to this. Let's say the government is meeting with US pharmaceutical companies in preparation of a deal. Now, there's the argument he makes where it's bad because Donald Trump, and because it sounds like we're selling the NHS, something which the Conservatives have repeatedly said they're not doing. So let's say they're not selling the NHS. What are they trying to do? The first and most obvious answer, is that they are not so much looking to sell off the NHS for those pharmaceutical companies to come in, which would make some sense if they did try that, but if they're saying they're not going to do it, let's believe them for a second. It's exactly what four-sided triangle says. To buy lower costing drugs. Why bother continuing with a trade deal, let's say, with the EU, if we can get the drugs cheaper with America? And I should say, Pfizer have a base in Sandwich, the town next to where I live. I almost got a job with them once when I first moved back here in 2012, but they'd just gone into a huge recession, and so I couldn't get a job, which is a shame because my qualifications had me pretty well suited for a decent job with them on a very good high salary. That sucks, but never mind. I am happy to take the hit and do what I do now instead on this platform because... fuck 'em. And yeah, so the argument he's going to make is Orange Man bad. It's conspiratorial. It is, you know what it is? It is the equivalent to scaremongery, and it is absolutely baseless because he has nothing to get to prove it. Because as he himself says, it's rumours. Rumours and assumptions, everyone. They are the mother of all fucked up choices. Because you have nothing to prove it. Therefore you are guessing. That is not what he should be doing. And I do, by the way, I should say this. If we can get our drugs cheaper from the States, yeah, we're going to get our drugs from the States. Because seriously, why pay more? Because let's not forget here, for those who get prescriptions, I pay for mine with the NHS. I pay about £9 every 2 months. That's it. That's all I pay. Right? I'm sure the government subsidises an aspect of that. If they can get the drugs cheaper, that would in turn mean that the price of the drugs could either stay where they are, but it wouldn't cost the government as much, or the price itself could, in fact, go down. Although I would say £9 isn't really much. It's not for me anyway. Not because I'm rich, but £9 really isn't much when you think of what it does for me for 2 months. So yeah.
Why did the Prime Minister previously say the health service wasn't...
I should say, Winston, they may not be cheap in the US, but I mean comparing to what we pay for our drugs currently. That's why it is right to think that perhaps they were looking at reducing cost where they could, if it were possible with a deal with the US.
On the table in any post-Brexit trade deal.
Before he continues, hello Sir Blue-Footed Booby, or Russell Burnham. Hope you're well.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that is very simple. It's because it is not on the table. And I pay tribute. And by the way, I pay tribute to the officials of the NHS who have just done a brilliant job in reducing the cost of Orkambi so that cystic fibrosis, made in America, by the way, so that cystic fibrosis sufferers in this country get the treatment they need at a cost that is reasonable to the taxpayers of this country. And if he wants to know how the people of this country are able to afford the stupendous investments that we're now making in the NHS, £34 billion, the biggest ever investment in the NHS, 40 new hospitals that we are building as a result of the decisions that we are taking. If It is because this is the party that supports wealth creation. And the reason we're able to invest in the NHS, Mr. Speaker, is that for the last 9 years, this economy has been growing. It has grown by 19% since the Conservatives first came into office. And he would ruin this economy and ruin our ability to fund the NHS. And that is the reality.
It should be pointed out that a number of our drugs already come from the US. So it's quite interesting to attack the US in a trade deal, but we already do have some stuff with them. What do you want us to expand our manufacturing centre? Yes, we think we can get that to work. Yeah. Hang on, why doesn't Boris counter by pointing out the scaremongering Labour is doing regarding medicine shortfalls, whereas he is working for a solution to the risk? Because that would be obvious. And also, hello Venus Elizabeth. But also because Boris can be a massive dick with the other answer. Because this is now an optics thing. This is the whole point. It's the crux of the matter. He no longer has to try with policy, because when he answers questions, if he can answer it a little bit and then take a shot at them and look good doing it, then that will look good on the election trail campaign. I think he'll destroy... I think, by the way, Boris will absolutely annihilate Corbyn in debates. If Boris is told to calm it down. Because... Oh, God, the coconut thing. Oh, no. But Boris, as we all know, has a tendency to stick his foot in his mouth. So I think it's going to be very dangerous, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see, when the debates happen, how he controls it. Because I know what Jo Swinson wants to do. She will try and attack them. That's the only option she has. And it's going to look bad because she's a busybody type. She reminds me of the personality of Hermione Granger, but none of the intelligence. Yeah. The busybody aspect anyway. And obviously Ian Blackford, yeah, honestly. No, Boris won't wreck Farage. I think Farage is going to win some seats. Many believe they need to work together. I tend to take a slight agree with that, but I'm not sure just yet. I think we need a few more weeks of the campaign to go ahead. We need to see how it progresses, because it's going to be very interesting. Yeah, can't barrage the Farage. It's going to be a very interesting first few weeks. We need to see how this unfolds. We need to see the hand they play, because if Labour play the hand I think they'll play, they will then spend much time instead saying, oh, we're going to invest in all this, which is what they do all the time anyway, but they're also going to attack Boris for 9 years, even though he wasn't in charge. In fact, and this is the obvious one, in fact, Boris wasn't in Parliament for the majority of it. Let's not forget here, he was Mayor of London for most of it. So he wasn't here. So it's one of those very odd things where he will take flack and get character assassinated because he can't be trusted, because they've set up the straw man over the last few weeks that he can't be trusted, even though he has done everything to obey the law. He literally has. He didn't sign the letter, but he sent it. Or someone did. I think it's possible, four-sided triangle. I think it could happen, but I'm not sure yet. I know Boris has done one thing recently that's gotten a few eyebrows raised. Of the 21 MPs he exiled and had the whip removed, he has reinstated 11 of them. I know he has not with Amber Rudd, who is leaving anyway, as in politics entirely. I know he hasn't with Sir Kenneth... no, is it Sir Kenneth Clarke? It might be. With Ken Clarke, the father of the house. So he hasn't with them two. I think he should with Ken Clarke, especially, to retain a strong seat. Ken Clarke is incredibly popular in Rushcliffe. There's no point, unless he retires. I think he might be. If he retires, then obviously it doesn't matter. If he doesn't retire and stays on for one more term, keep him. Diane... Oh, dear God, Saki.
Mr. Speaker, we all welcome the fact that a Canby will now be able to be provided in this country under the NHS, and we thank those that campaigned for it. The shame is that we're not told what the deal is with the company concerned. And as for these fabled 40 hospitals, that figure dropped to 20 and then finally dropped to 6. Mr. Speaker, we learned this week that government officials have met US pharmaceutical companies 5 times as part of the Prime Minister's planned trade detail. The US has called for full market access to our NHS, which would mean prices of some of our most important medicines increasing by up to 7-fold. Mr. Speaker, whilst the government is having secret meetings with
allegedly
US corporations, it's patients here that continue to suffer. Can the Prime Minister explain why the number of people waiting longer for urgent cancer treatment has tripled over the last 9 years?
I can. More people have been diagnosed with it, so that's obvious and self-explanatory. As the population increases, it makes some sense. There was less money available for resources because austerity had to be introduced. So it was always going to be a consequence that people seeking treatment with resources being stretched thinner and thinner because the inability to... furry kitten, you should be ashamed of yourself. It was always inevitable that because of reckless spending and no money to pay for anything, that people would have to suffer, and it's entirely your party's fault. You should be ashamed of yourselves. But of course, to you, austerity was always a political choice and not an economic necessity, says the guy who doesn't understand the economy at all. Thinks he can borrow hundreds of billions to buy back services, to then borrow even more to invest in them. I don't think you know what you're talking about, but never mind. What do I know? I am, it's got Legacy of Blair written all over it, you're damn right. Do not send me a link, Socky.
Mr. Speaker, as he knows very well, this government is investing £34 billion into the NHS.
It should be pointed out that because the NHS had lost money over the years, that 30 whatever billion is not as impressive. I think it reduces it by about 20. So there is more money going into it, but it's not as much as he's now saying because of what was taken away when austerity was first introduced, and over the years where austerity had to continually find areas to cut costs. Okay.
We are seeing improvements in cancer survival rates across the country. We are seeing improvements in cancer survival rates thanks to the investments that this government is making. And I think it absolutely satirical, Mr. Speaker, that he should claim credit for getting Orkambi and other drugs delivered at a reasonable price. That is the work of the UK government. That is the work of the NHS supporting NICE to ensure that people in this country get affordable treatments. And he may not be aware of it, Mr. Speaker, but the Vertex, the company that makes Orkambi, comes from America. Is he seriously suggesting that the NHS should not engage in negotiations to ensure that British patients get the drugs they deserve? Is he so phobic? Is he so phobic of American companies that he would forbid them for having those discussions?
Yes, because Orange Man bad, everyone, remember?
Mr. Speaker, not for the first time that Prime Minister's talking nonsense.
No, he isn't. You're going to prove that in a moment.
Of course we need to import medicines from various places. I just want it to be done in an open and transparent way.
He doesn't have to do that, though. In fact, he doesn't have to do any of that openly with you. If it was all done openly, transparently, then there would never be any trade deals done because your technique for negotiating, openly that is, would be so bad that the deals we get would end up being worse than the deal we have with the EU. Your jack-o'-lantern looks like Trump. Nice one.
I don't want secret talks between government officials on behalf of ministers with big pharma corporations in the USA.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was it supposed to be the ministers themselves doing the discussions? I'm sorry. I didn't realise. I thought perhaps people who were skilled enough to be able to have those discussions could have those discussions because they're the right people to be there. Oh, Jessa. Sounds like you like to micromanage to me.
And last year, Mr. Speaker, 34,000 cancer patients waited more than 2 months for treatment.
They did, and that was actually sad. I wish those people got the treatment they deserved and needed, but they didn't, and we have to accept that responsibility.
And whilst early detection is obviously very important, the longer people wait, the less chance there is of survival from cancer. The Prime Minister knows that, I know that, the whole world knows that. Why can't he get it and put the necessary resources into the NHS to cut the waiting time?
Right.
I'll be honest, based on what he just said, I thought he'd finished his question as well. I didn't realise Jeremy had to continue.
If he could just be patient for 30 seconds. He says, Mr. Speaker, he claims, Mr. Speaker, the NHS is safe in his hands. Why then has NHS privatisation doubled under this government, with nearly £10 billion being spent on private companies within our NHS?
Wasn't under his government. I should point that out now, because there were bursaries that had already been existing from not bursaries, money given subsidies to companies that have been, for the best part of a decade, been maintaining services that we could not maintain because we couldn't afford what it would have required when we could have sold aspects off at the time, because we did not have the ability to keep them going. It was that simple, whereas the subsidy was at least a way then to keep the service going without it costing as much as it was going to cost originally, because we don't pay as much as you think we do into that.
Mr. Speaker, the NHS is receiving unrivaled and unprecedented sums of taxpayers' money. But if he is seriously saying that he would not like dentists and opticians and Macmillan care nurses to work with the NHS, then I think he frankly must be out of his mind, Mr. Speaker. Let me tell him that cancer survival rates have actually increased year on year since 2010. Cancer survival rates have increased, and more and more people are seen within the right waiting time, thanks to the investments that we are making. And I think he should pay tribute to the hard work of NHS staff, and he should recognise and stop talking down their incredible achievements.
Well, that's the point. See, they could have 99.9% success rate on everything, and he will complain about the 0.01%. He being Jeremy Corbyn. He is opposition. He will then say that is not good enough, because he's a massive twat.
Should recognise that we intend, if we come back as the next government, we will invest massively in that NHS and take it forward with the funds that we will make available from a strong and growing economy. And the reality is that he would wreck that economy.
Mr. Speaker, what we don't want is private companies like Virgin Healthcare suing our NHS for contracts they didn't get.
Yeah, and they'll lose those, so why are you worried? Oh, you didn't get a contract. They didn't get they lost one of their rail ones as well. I think they threatened to sue with that as well. You didn't get it because you weren't good enough, Virgin. Sorry.
Our NHS should be focused on making people better.
That's why the bureaucracy costs like a huge slice of what they get every year from the budget. Because they're making things better, everyone, with more paperwork. I don't see anything on my screen. That's weird. I should probably put... If I do that... No. I have no idea what that was then. Okay, never mind. Carry on.
Not the wealthy few richer.
Ah, for the many, not the few. Gotcha.
The National Health Service A&E departments, Mr. Speaker, have just had their worst September on record. This morning, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine says This winter, the NHS needs over 4,000 extra beds. Could the Prime Minister explain why, under his government, the number of people in England waiting for an operation has now reached a record high of 4.4 million?
Because there's more people, services stretched thin, lack of resources, more people being diagnosed with conditions that we can now treat, which is the absolute obvious one. Many conditions not being known beforehand. Do I need to continue? Or are you going to actually try and stand on this argument from a position that we just have to have the stuff there and, that's bad that we don't? You really aren't anything about the substance, are you? You're just about looking good. And you fail. Because you're a patronising twat. Who's got it wrong?
Mr. Speaker, there's a reason why more people are receiving NHS care, and that is because the NHS is working harder and achieving more than ever before. And if he wants to look at what Labour, if the House wants to look at what Labour would be like in office, look at their performance in, well, by the way, I should say the SNP government that negotiated a much higher price for, or can be, it occurs to me, in Scotland. They did. They got the price totally wrong. You should have a word with them. If the people of this country want a horrific foretaste of what life would be like under a Labour-run NHS, look at the NHS in Wales, where all health targets are routinely missed. The A&E waiting target hasn't been met since 2008. Inpatient outpatients haven't been met since August 2010. Urgent cancer treatment. He talks about cancer treatment, Mr. Speaker. It hasn't been met since June 2008. That is how Labour runs the NHS, Mr. Speaker.
I'm surprised he can keep a straight face saying that while his government has cut so much from the Welsh Government's budget.
Their budget was ascertained with a model, and the model was based on population at the time, and therefore the resources allocated accordingly. But as is the case with any government for a devolved administration, if they don't know how to spend the money, they're never going to get it right. There are very few places I've ever noticed where Labour have got it right. They have in a few places when it's councils and not governments, I guess, that are giving the money, dealing with the money, even spending the money. But Wales is a damning statement for Welsh Labour because they have genuinely failed. Denny Crane, imagine mocking your own country while playing Truck Driver Simulation. Yes. I'm so glad. Yeah. I'm so glad you watch. Thank you. How you doing anyway? Anyway, so where was I? It was the point about Welsh Labour. Yes. They get money allocated from the budget, and they obviously raise their own money as well from additional taxes, should they choose to, and they do. And they don't do a very good job of it.
And from a government that's cut 15,000 beds out of the NHS, that has cut 7 billion from social care, I don't know how he's got the brass neck to say what he just said.
Forgetting why those cuts had to happen in the first place. Hello, Dead Privacy. I'm very well, thank you. Hope you're well as well, by the way, Denny. You haven't actually answered me yet. I like you trolling me, though. That's great.
The reality is, Mr. Speaker, his words are hollow. Anyone who's tried to get a GP appointment, who sees how overworked our NHS staff are when they visit a hospital, and the stress NHS staff go through when they can't deal with all the patients that are coming in, he needs to think about this.
I'm waiting for him to bring up the part where he contradicts or proves a point, where he says that he's not afraid of America and it's nonsense, with a comment he's going to make that proves the point.
Give an example. A lady called Gillian wrote to me this week. Yes, it's a real case of a real person, and I will quote her letter if I may, Mr. Speaker. Gillian says, "My mother died in February as a direct result of the GP shortage in the UK. Her last years were marred by long waits for treatments and for interventions. Whenever she got care, it was given by overstretched but very dedicated people. But it always came after painful and debilitating delays. Why should that happen to Gillian's mum or anybody else's mum? The problem is the shortage of GPs, the shortage of nurses, and the excessive waiting time for people with very difficult conditions and deep pain. They should be sympathised with and supported.
So I should say, there's an issue with GPs, and I find this one to be quite fascinating, in that, and it's not because they're overpaid, because some of these people work 12, possibly longer hour days. It's that because of how much they earn and because of the hours they put in, many are able to retire at 50 with a salary, pension even, and savings that just keep them going easily. And so we are in a bit of a position where while we are able to continue creating new GPs, we're not offsetting it well enough because they're entitled to retire younger, and the only way to really force this to a conclusion where we still have enough GPs is to then raise a minimum retirement age for them, thereby depriving them of the choice. I do think it's upsetting what happened to this particular person. It truly is. But I don't think it's right to use the one incident with one person who has actually suffered as a case and point when the issue surrounding GPs is one where it comes down to personal choice of the GP itself. We do need to get to a position where we have more coming into the country. We have been trying to get more skilled workers, doctors especially, and obviously training more people to be doctors is important as well, but the resources aren't as available as they once were. What was that? Talk a lot but do nothing. Oh, well, that's what happens on a political stream, Denny. Maybe you should stop bringing in immigrants in the boatload and putting the stress on the already overstretched. I think a lot of it comes down to we do need to have controlled immigration. I won't blame it on those who are Muslim yet. Kalamati, Labour councils privatising GPs to US companies doesn't help either. Yeah, that doesn't help in the slightest. If we Logan's Run people before retirement age, we could halve our welfare budget. That's an option. Blah, 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 Omegon. I say that all the time anyway.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can certainly say that we will deal with his constituent Gillian's concerns, but I can tell him that there are 17,300 more doctors and over 17,000 more nurses on our wards since 2010, and
I would point out this doesn't quite sound as impressive when you include population increase to what usually takes place with the patients and population and doctors representing that balance of number of patients per doctor. It's not as impressive, but it's still a promising sign at least. I would say of the people I went to university with that have since become doctors, 6 in fact, not one of them is involved in is a GP. Not one of them is working for a hospital. In fact, they all went private because, as far as they were concerned, there was more money to be made. And they all work as cosmetic surgeons. One does fillers of some kind for lips and other such areas. Irate Alex, look at you. How you doing, man? I'm alright. I saw your text earlier. I forgot to reply. I will definitely send it to you afterwards. And Denny, it's not surprising about me in debates, because I have actually said on many occasions I don't debate because I can't debate. So yeah, I'd get smashed. Thank you for stating the obvious, though. I do appreciate it. Why am I not Dr. Russell? Because somebody stole my candidacy work for my PhD, and I couldn't prove it was mine. And then when they failed, and the university realised it was mine, at that point I was done with them. So I walked away. We're having a general election in mid-December. Hello, Scotty. Hope you're well. So yes, let's continue.
I think, frankly, Mr. Speaker, it is time to differentiate between the politics of protest and the politics of leadership. And he should apologise, Mr. Speaker, for continually striking attitudes that I do not think are in the interest of the... It's all very easy to be an Islingtonian protester and say that you side with Russia over what happened in Salisbury, or to say that you have a £196 billion programme of renationalisation, or continually to flip-flop one way or the other, now leave, now remain, refusing to respect the verdict of the people in the referendum on the EU. Leadership means standing up for the people of this country, standing up for our police, standing up for our NHS, making sure that it gets the funding that it needs, and standing up for our economy and for our wealth creators. And above all, it means getting Brexit done and ending the dither and the delay. The time for protest is over, Mr. Speaker.
Adhere to or inadequate.
Sorry about that, guys. I will go back here.
Half of ministers with big pharma corporations welcome the fact that Okambi will now be able to be provided.
My apologies for that. I hit Alt on my keyboard when I went to move my hand across it. Apparently, I completely failed. Let's see if I can find where it was. Nope. Skip ahead a bit.
And
schools, primary and secondary across the country.
Right.
Isn't the truth, Mr. Speaker, that
The right honourable gentleman.
I may as well just continue with this part because this makes more sense. There we go.
Standing up for our NHS, making sure that it gets the funding that it needs, and standing up for our economy and for our wealth creators. And above all, it means getting Brexit done and ending the dither and the delay. The time for protest is over, Mr. Speaker. It's time for leadership, and that is what this government provides.
Thank you, Four-Sided Triangle, for the timestamp. Do not put Blackford on. Thank you. Getting flustered by chat. No, I hit Alt on the keyboard and skipped it a few hours to the Grenfell debate. I had to go back. I don't get flustered by the chat. But I do read it all. Thank you, by the way, Denny. Your interaction actually is amazing. Hello, James. Hope you're well. Let's continue.
Mr. Speaker, coming from a Prime Minister who withdrew his own bill, it seems a bit odd.
He withdrew it because he couldn't get it through on the 31st because of you fuckheads. Because you guys decided, yeah, no. Yeah.
Odd. My question, Mr. Speaker, was about somebody whose mother had died and she believes that's because of the shortage of staff within the NHS.
Unless it's proven that is why, then until then it's simply a case that she passed. What would need to be known about the passing of that particular person? You cannot simply say she died because of a lack of doctors. One would have to know more about her condition as well, and the state of her body at time before she passed. And yeah, they obstructed the bill. Priti Patel. Oh, would you? You're a fan of Priti Patel. Okay. I'm not a fan of her so much because of the death penalty thing. Hello, Semper Bear. And yes, I'm soft-spoken. Thank you, Denny. Darling.
I would have hoped the Prime Minister would have tried to show some empathy and answer that question. Because GP numbers are falling, there's 43,000 nurses shortage in the NHS, and it suffered the longest spending squeeze ever in its history.
Forgetting why it had to happen in the first place, you absolute doddery old fool. It's almost like you have dementia.
Mr. Speaker, the choice at this election couldn't be clearer.
I like all the noise that's coming from the politicians forgetting about the Brexit Party.
People have a chance to vote for real change after years of Conservative and Lib Dem cuts. Privatisation and tax handouts for the richest. This government that's put our NHS into crisis. This election is a once-in-a-generation chance to end privatisation in our NHS, give it the funding it needs, and give it the doctors, the nurses, the GPs and all the other staff that it needs. Despite the Prime Minister's denials, our NHS is up for grabs by US corporations in a Trump-style trade deal. Isn't the truth, Mr. Speaker, that...
The right honourable gentleman will not be shouted down under any circumstances. He will complete his inquiry to the satisfaction of the chair, and people who think otherwise will quickly learn that they are, as usual, wrong. Jeremy Corbyn!
Before he continues, imagine smugly laughing like Sargon and you did less. I never said I was going to do anything, though, did I? I am just a commentator. I am not an activist. Sargon started as a commentator and became an activist by choice. He did that because of personal reasons where he felt he could do more by being more actively involved. And yes, he's wearing the green tie for Grenfell and basically so he can get more votes. Hello, Keith, as well, and Eliza Lopez. So I hope that answers the point. I know you're trolling, Denny, because I've seen you in my chat many times before, and you've never been so block caps before. I remember everyone, after all. I'm just rubbish with names. But yes, Sargon was not an activist, now he is. And that's great for him, actually. It's fantastic, because he is now doing something he is so passionate about. And yes, he's lost, he's had setbacks, but I can't take away from the fact that he actually had a go. I don't criticise Sargon ever, because I don't care. What he chooses to do is his business. Now, how I affect change would be by addressing what they say in the videos. And if I can change people's minds through what they say, then that's more important to me than me going out there and putting myself out there and trying to debate people, because I can't debate. I know my limitations. Therefore I invest myself in what I believe I am good at. Hello, Skeptok. Okay? Sure, I'm doing it, but I'm not an activist. I'm just a commentator. Nothing more, and I don't seek to be anything more than that either. I know you're trolling me, Denny, by the way. I really do. By all means, continue. It's funny.
Mr. Speaker, despite his denials, the NHS is up for grabs by US corporations in a Trump trade deal.
Earlier, he said that the idea of him being afraid of trading with America was nonsense, and yet he has now contradicted that by peddling this. Therefore, he is a hypocrite because of his own nonsense. I know I fell for troll bait, Saki. I'm precious. It's more, actually, to be honest, I think actually serves as a fantastic opportunity to address a point for myself mostly, because it will eventually come up. Somebody will say it. And if I've already then had a chance to air an opinion on it, even if it does come at the hands of a troll, I have a chance to sit back and take a moment and just say what I think without getting overwhelmed or caught out. Which means in time I'll be able to refine what I believe I do and what I am and go from there. So yeah, I think that's interesting for me. I find that to be the more fascinating aspect, and I quite enjoy that. And I think, give it time, I'll be able to answer that better. Hello, Jonas Petterson. Oh, or Peterson. Petterson, yes, Petterson, sorry. Yeah, so actually I don't mind feeding the troll, because I have an opportunity to think. I like thinking.
Isn't the truth, and the government may not like it, isn't the truth that this government is preparing to sell out our NHS? Our health service is in more danger than at any other time in its glorious history because of his government, his attitudes, and the trade deals he wants to strike.
Calamati, I have a dude on my videos calling me a class trait of being a well-ish spoken Scotsman. Salty commentators come in all forms. Yeah, so I've been told. Hello, Brian Wilson. Thank you, by the way, for the donation. I find people attack because of how one speaks or what one chooses to do, or because they don't believe you've done enough, to be unfortunate. Because I know, as I said, I know my limitations, so I'm quite happy to be criticised for not doing enough, even though I know I could never do enough. I would like to do more, but I know I can't. But still, it's interesting. It's good. It's something to think of. It's like a food for thought, isn't it?
Mr. Speaker, I do indeed agree that there is a stark choice facing this country at this election, and it is between economic catastrophe under the Labour Party, a £196 billion programme taking away money from companies and putting it on a pointless renationalisation programme, putting up taxes on corporations, on people, on pensions, on businesses, and at the highest level in the whole of Europe, Mr. Speaker. That is the catastrophe, the economic catastrophe that he offers, but it's worse than that because he also offers a political disaster. Consigning next year, which should be a wonderful year for our country, to 2 more referendums, Mr. Speaker. Another referendum on the EU, because he can't make up his mind on what he thinks, flip-flopping this way and that, and another referendum on Scottish independence. Why on earth should the people of this country spend the next year, which will be a glorious year, going through the toxic, tedious torpor of 2 more referendums thanks to Labour? We want next year to be a great year for our country, Mr. Speaker. We want it to be a great year because we are going to invest more in front-line NHS services. We are going to reduce violent crime with more police officers on our streets. 20,000. That's what I pledged on the steps of Downing Street, and we've done it. We are going to invest in every one of our schools, primary and secondary, across the country. That's what I pledged on the steps of Downing Street, and we are delivering it. We are going to invest in a fantastic infrastructure programme for our country. Gigabit broadband across the whole nation. That's what I pledged across the steps on the steps of Downing Street. That is what we're going to deliver. And we are going to deliver a fantastic deal by which this country will come out of the European Union. A deal that he has tried to block and that we will deliver. That is the future for this country. Drift and dither under the Labour Party, or taking Britain forward to a brighter future under the Conservatives. That is the choice this country faces.
As you can tell, I was right about the start when I indicated that this was a campaign start, and you heard it there for the better part of a minute with him, with Boris, making it quite clear what his position is going forward and what Labour would bring to the table. And yes, the alliteration was impressive, I have to admit. I have a strange feeling that one was written down somewhere. And as far as what he says about Jeremy Corbyn's policies go, most of it has been costed and proven to be absolutely impossible without borrowing a phenomenal amount of money. Something which I'm not okay with, to be honest. I don't understand why someone would want to do that instead of living within their means. It's the equivalent. I love this because governments banned and put heavy restrictions on those loan companies. Remember, like Wonga? Anyone remember Wonga? Yeah. So the problem with Wonga was if you were low income and you had a loan, you would end up in the position where you'd end up paying back the loan and interest, but be no better off afterwards because you put yourself in a worse position, therefore having to borrow money again. And that was a problem. And this is the same problem, when you think about it, that the United Kingdom government faced when about, 20% of GDP was being spent on debt interest. That's not good. That's really, really bad. And I think it was a damning statement for how reckless the government was at the time that was allowed to persist under the guise of doing more to help people, but because you had no money, you've left out the apostrophe, Danny, on your thought you'd need to know. Sorry. By all means, continue though. But yes, it's quite interesting to see the policies that they are positing early on because then when analyses are done on them, they are able to then properly cost it and realise it's one of those very odd things where it's not costed fully and it doesn't make any sense unless it hurts more people in the long run, because the entire premise of it even working is based on an economy of endless growth or continued growth, where we're not in recession, so growth outside the rather low end. But because of how scared people are of those policies, where it comes to reckless spending, it becomes quite tricky. And to the comment of failed streamer, there are 81 people watching. That's not bad. To be honest, that's 81 more people than I would hope to get. I set the target of 0. The fact anyone turns up to me, I'm eternally grateful for. And thank you for trolling. I really appreciate it tonight. We are going to move on to the paper pervert before we continue. So I'll bring this up. I do have an updated image somewhere, but I've forgotten about it. So I need to go and find his questions. Ah, there he is. Right. Paper pervert.
Turns very speedily.
Here we go. Everyone ready for the paper pervert? Hello, Valorous. Valorous. My mistake. A good pounding for the chat. Yeah. And I never said I was changing 81 lives. Only that they're here. I can't be the one to say that anything's been changed. Hello, Cheryl. They have to be the ones to say that, not me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I, on behalf of those of us on these benches, wish you all the best for your impending retirement and salute you, sir, for the way that you have stood up for the democracy of this House in order that at this time of crisis that we hold the government to account. We trust that you enjoy your many passions in retirement. You'll always be welcome up in Scotland, and if you need to visit a football team as an antidote to Arsenal, you'll always be welcome at Easter Road to see the mighty Hibernian. And let me, Mr. Speaker,
Hibernian suck.
Let me, Mr. Speaker, wish England all the best for the rugby on Saturday.
Oh, that couldn't have been said with more gritted teeth. Hello, Vince. Hope you're well. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister's extreme Brexit will take a wrecking ball to the economy and cost Scotland and the United Kingdom up to £70 billion a year. You know, Mr.
That's based on projection over a period of 10 years. That doesn't even actually cost anything at all. Shut up. That is entirely based on predictions of economic growth.
Speaker, we can talk about the impact of Brexit and they howl and complain because they know the reality that it's going to damage people's life. Isn't the truth, Prime Minister is willing to throw Scotland under his big red bus to deliver his Brexit, no matter what the cost?
Mr. Speaker, as the right honourable gentleman knows very well, the greatest damage that could be done to the Scottish economy would be their reckless plan to break up the union with the UK. 60% of Scotland's business, of Scotland's exports, is with the rest of the UK. They would be throwing away not just the biggest block grant in history that Scotland has received this year, but of course all the benefits of membership of the most successful political partnership in history, from shipbuilding in Govan to the Glasgow Climate Change Summit next year, Mr. Speaker, which will be a glory of our whole United Kingdom, and which is coming to Scotland precisely because Scotland is part of the United Kingdom. And they would throw all that away, Mr. Speaker, with their crackpot plan for borders at Berwick and creating a new Scottish currency, Mr. Speaker, or joining the euro, worse still, going into the European Union, handing back control of Scotland's fisheries, Scotland's spectacular marine wealth, just at the moment that they've been won back by this country, handing back control of those fisheries to Brussels. That's their policy, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to contesting it at the barricades.
I should point out there's actually something quite interesting here. Ian Blackford, while talking about Scottish independence, he was asked about if they won independence, the negotiating of leave, as in leaving the United Kingdom, that is. And someone said, so you don't support no deal? Okay. How would you negotiate a deal with the United Kingdom to leave if there was no deal? Would you be willing to leave without a deal? And he said that he said it was nonsense, and that the party had a white paper ready to negotiate the best deal for Scotland. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I want to press X to doubt. Oh, thank you, Four-Sided Triangle. Would you support another referendum for proportional... That's actually an often... Oh, it's such a tricky one, isn't it? Because obviously we don't do first past the post. We do... It's all based on representation of MPs, isn't it? It's party we vote for, not the individual. So we don't vote for the Prime Minister, we vote for the party, and the one with the most seats has the majority. I'm not too sure. I would have to, and I have to say, it's all honesty, Four-Sided Triangle, thank you for the donation, by the way. I would have to give it some more thought. I do recall a few years ago, Sargon of all people, he actually made a video on this, and he supports the current system we have and conceded that while it wasn't perfect, it was better than proportional or first past the post, I think. Oh God, now I'm confused. I'm sorry. I will have to get back to you on that. Do forgive me. I will tell you what. I will talk to Trups about this, and we will discuss it on Friday. I think that's the best opportunity, because he and I both come from different political systems, which means you're going to get a very interesting answer. And also, it will give me a chance to learn about the American system, the pros and cons, from an American, which I think would be great for the stream. I need to remember that before I forget. Can someone DM me so I don't forget? I really appreciate that. And thank you, Four-Sided Triangle. I appreciate that you'll tune in for that.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I thought it was Prime Minister's questions, not a rant from the Prime Minister. And I have to say...
Before it pops, Kalamati, the white paper is a lot of pish. There it is. It's pipe dreams and platitudes and not a whole lot else. Yeah, it's why I'm very concerned for the quality of the deal that you're possibly going to get. I can't, Socky, in good conscience, check the video because I only have one Google Chrome window open. If I click the link of that video, even though it says YouTube, I'm half worried you're going to send me to Pornhub. Because I know you, Socky. I don't trust you, Socky. Just saying.
I have to say... Order! Mr. Kerr, I'm seriously worried about your condition. Calm yourself, man. Oh, I'm very concerned for you. Calm down. Ian Blackford!
Well, I certainly wish Mr. Grant all the best for his future because he's not coming back like so many of the Scottish Conservatives. And, you know, we hear that the Prime Minister's going to be coming up to Scotland in the election campaign. Can I tell the Prime Minister he's welcome? Because each time he comes to Scotland, he drives SNP supporters up.
That's not true, because he's only been a Prime Minister for a while and, you know, there haven't been any actual elections. So you're talking nonsense.
Mr. Speaker, Scotland didn't vote for Brexit, and we won't have it forced upon us. Isn't it clear that the Scottish National Party is the only party standing up for Scotland's interests and respecting our democratic decision to remain in the European Union? Mr. Speaker, this coming election will be one of the most important in Scotland's history. Only a vote for the SNP can secure the escape route for Scotland away from this Brexit mess, from the chaos of Westminster, the austerity of the Tories, and to protect Scotland's right to choose our own future as an independent country in Europe.
The arrogance is unbelievable, really, but understandably it is the SNP who are one of the biggest parties in the United Kingdom and only truly interested in Scotland. Many will say at this point, give them independence, don't give them a deal, and see how they get on. I would prefer for them to stay in the United Kingdom and just have a few of their seats taken away. I know Labour want to take some of their seats away, which is unlikely. And I should now just say I don't know what you're talking about with debates. I said I don't debate anyway because I'm rubbish at them. So, yeah. I will not be bothering with the answer because it's not really much of a question. He wants Scotland to be part of the EU and remain a part of it, and apparently his voice is louder than that of all the constituencies that voted leave, which make up a huge chunk of the benches on the side he sat on, just not in the quadrant he's in. Yeah, so I am done. I went a bit longer than anticipated. I do apologise. I will be back here tomorrow with a video. Yeah, I'm going to do one not on Brexit or general election. I'm going to do it on a person, because I think they're a bit of a legend, because they're a massive idiot, and it's very funny. And I think it'd be very funny to have a fun video about somebody in politics who's made a number of poor decisions and point. Because some of them are very funny. And I think I want to try and do... I want to try and be a bit more humorous with certain people. And it's not going to be Paper Pervert, though. Hello, Maggie Rose. I'm very sorry you're late. I'm about to finish. It's not Diane Abbott either. It's going to be someone else entirely different who has made some really funny decisions. And I'm not laughing at people trying. And for the sake of context, I'm laughing at somebody that got caught buying cocaine to then go and rent a rent boy and snort cocaine with the rent boy. That is what I'm going to be laughing at. So they were trying. They were trying to get laid. And it's really funny. So, by all means, continue the troll. The chat know who I'm talking about. Yes. Keith Vaz. Tomorrow, everyone. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the donations. What can I do with a... No. Denny, you did good, man. You did good. You did fantastic job. See you later. See you later, everyone.